A top UN official raised the alarm on nuclear safety in Ukraine and Russia. New Canadian-funded NATO infrastructure has opened at the Adazi military base in Latvia. Flights were grounded and emergency services were hampered after a major IT outage spread across the Netherlands. A top UN official has raised the alarm on nuclear safety in Ukraine and Russia. At a Security Council meeting, he says the UN nuclear watchdog reported periodic military activity near power plants in both regions.
The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, reported deterioration of the nuclear safety situation at Ukraine's Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Concerns are also rising over nuclear safety and security in the Kursk region of the Russian Federation.
Meanwhile, Russia stepped up its offensive in Ukraine, firing dozens of missiles and drones in its biggest onslaught in weeks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the situation near Pokrovsk and other areas of the Donetsk region remains extremely difficult. He says this is where Russia's largest forces are concentrated. He once again called on Ukraine's allies to consider lifting restrictions on the use of long-range weapons. The cutting of the red ribbon marks the opening of additional NATO multinational brigade infrastructure at the Adazi military base in Latvia. The new Canadian-funded facilities will house the brigade's tanks and armored vehicles and will provide areas for maintenance.
It's a multi-million euro project. I think it's in excess of 7 million euro. It's just one more commitment to the efforts that we are to combat the aggression that's happening in the theater. We're bringing people in here. We're training our people. We're bringing in equipment, and then we're housing this equipment with infrastructure.
The brigade is expected to be ready for combat by 2026. Meanwhile, in Lithuania, construction is underway for the development of a military base in Rukla. The base is funded by Germany and implemented via NATO and will be one of the 2 bases in Lithuania to house German soldiers.
It's about deterrence, and it's about Russia. And we must be able to station a German armored brigade here in Lithuania in order to ensure the freedom of the Western nations.
The brigade will be home to around 2,000 soldiers, including combat vehicles, and is expected to become completely operational in 2027.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has announced Spain will sign a series of partnership agreements with Gambia aimed at stemming the surge in migrants arriving to the Canary Islands from West Africa.
Our countries will sign a memorandum of understanding on circular migration. This new initiative aims at facilitating safe, orderly, and regular migration that will benefit both our countries and citizens.
Sanchez's visit to Gambia is part of his 3-day tour of West Africa, during which he hopes to reinforce bilateral relations with Mauritania, Gambia and Senegal. The 3 coastal African nations have become the main departure points of migrants trying to reach the Canary Islands, where, according to Spain's Interior Ministry, more than 22,000 people have arrived since January. Sanchez reached an agreement with Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani earlier this week to renew cooperation between their nation's security forces to combat people smuggling.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited Berlin on Tuesday in a bid to repair relations with the EU and to renegotiate some of the Brexit terms agreed to by the previous Conservative government. Starmer and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced a new deal that they hope to finalise by the end of this year that will focus on security, trading and intelligence sharing. Whilst both leaders said there was no change in their stances on the Middle East and on weapons deliveries to Ukraine, they said they would focus their efforts on smashing illegal smuggling rings in a bid to curb irregular migration to both the EU and the UK. Whilst the two countries celebrated their close friendship, they are becoming increasingly isolated in Europe as two of the very few remaining countries governed by social democrats. Germany's federal election is scheduled for autumn 2025, and a change in the government is widely expected to be on the cards. Liv Stroud, in Berlin, for Euronews.
Flights were grounded and emergency services were hampered after a major IT outage spread across the Netherlands. The outage was a result of a malfunction in the IT system of the Dutch Ministry of Defense.
Delay is nu al 2 keer ondertussen. Eerst was het tot 12 uur uitgesteld en nu tot 1 uur is het al. Dus we weten niet effectief of het doorgaat of niet.
The highly secured network is used by emergency services, the Royal Marechaussee and the Ministry in The Hague. The outage also impacted Eindhoven Airport, which shares facilities with the Ministry of Defense. 20 flights were cancelled and others were redirected to Amsterdam and Brussels. The extent and the cause of the outage remains unclear, although there is reportedly no indication of malicious intent.
We wijzen daar niet op, maar uitsluiten kan ik op dit moment niet. Maar Defensie heeft niet de rode bal gehezen.
The Defense Ministry have since confirmed they were restarting its systems.
Croatian firefighters say they prevented a large wildfire from growing and engulfing homes in a town near Split. A chief fire official said the situation in Jaranovnica has stabilised, with none of the 250 firefighters involved injured. 2 Canadair waterbombing aircrafts extinguished a fire raging in a nearby mountainous area, he added. The fire broke out after a lightning storm on Monday and was accelerated on Tuesday due to strong winds. Many Balkan countries have battled large blazes over the summer period, including Bulgaria, Greece and North Macedonia. Experts warn the Mediterranean will continue to experience the brunt of the climate crisis as the region battles extreme temperatures and drought.
Northern Greece is facing a significant water crisis owing to prolonged drought conditions exacerbated by successive heatwaves and a lack of rainfall. Until recently, Lake Pikrolimni in northern Greece was a popular destination for mud baths, but this summer it's just cracked earth.
Έχει 2 χρόνια τώρα, δεν βρέχει καθόλου, γι' αυτό και η λίμνη έχει ξεραθεί εντελώς. Κάποτε είχε πολύ νερό, υπήρχε κόσμος, έκανε μπάνιο.
The shoreline of Lake Doirani, which straddles Greece's northern border with North Macedonia, has receded by 300 metres in recent years. In Halkidiki, the olive grove of Dimitris Papadakis is also suffering from drought. 6 weeks before harvest, he and his son have to transport water by truck. And in near Potidia town in Halkidiki, a very popular tourist area, locals use all sorts of ways to cope with frequent household water cuts.
Κάνω κυκλική οικονομία. Δηλαδή πλένω τα πιάτα μου και πετάω το νερό στην αυλή. Κάνω ντουζ μέσα σε λεκάνη και πετάω το νερό στην αυλή. Γιατί αλλιώς θα στεγνώσουν τα πάντα. Αναγκαστικά προσπαθώ να εξοικονομήσω νερό από παντού. Και όταν χρειάστηκε, κουβάλισε και με το καρότσι νερό από τη θάλασσα για την τουαλέτα.
The EU's Emergency Management Service says acute drought conditions extend from the Black Sea westward into northern Greece.
Extreme heat and drought. This year in Italy, the product of olive oil, one of the fundamental ingredients of the Mediterranean diet, will suffer heavy consequences from water scarcity. The region of Apulia in the south of Italy is responsible for around 50% of the national olive oil production, but the drought has been felt harshly here. Pietro Leone manages an agricultural company in the province of Foggia with around 100 hectares planted with olive trees. This year, low rainfall has seriously impacted olive production, and next November's harvest promises to be poorer than the previous year.
Quest'anno come produzione è scarsa, è molto meno di quella dell'anno scorso, perché abbiamo avuto lo stress idrico, ce lo stiamo portando avanti da un paio di anni, e poi abbiamo avuto 2 giornate maledette durante la fioritura che parecchie varietà non hanno legato. E quest'anno abbiamo dal 50 all'80% in meno della produzione.
The Capaccio Dam is the closest to the city of Foggia and supplies water to the entire province for industry, irrigation, and drinking purposes. It is fed by a stream that transports rainwater into the reservoir. Today, this dam is practically empty and contains just 2.5 million cubic meters of water compared to the usual 17 million cubic meters. What little there is comes from last winter. This year, the dam did not fill. The other 3 reservoirs in the province of Foggia are only 50% full.
Abbiamo avuto, anziché 300 milioni di metri cubi disponibili nei 4 invasi, la metà, 150 milioni di metri cubi appena. Per cui abbiamo fatto mezza stagione irrigua nel comprensorio irriguo e poi ci siamo dovuti fermare per conservare 9 mesi di autonomia del potabile.
Numeri e percentuali sono preoccupanti, ma diventano scioccanti quando si traducono in immagini. Prati verdi e animali hanno rimpiazzato l'acqua. Qui possiamo vedere in concreto cosa significa il termine siccità.
The low water levels of this artificial reservoir may be an advantage for grazing cows, but are very dangerous for olive trees. Although these plants need less water than other crops, temperatures above 40 degrees for 50 consecutive days put the production of olives, and therefore the precious olive oil, at great risk.